the Yankees came a-calling. He was hired because Steinbrenner was looking for a splash manager hire. George got what he asked for. The Yankees advanced to the World Series in 1976 for the first time in over a decade, and then they won the 1977 World Series. Even though the team had success, the Bronx was burning. The Yankees signed Reggie Jackson in 1977, and he and Billy clashed immediately. Billy had a history of not getting along with his star player. I just told you about Willie Horton in Detroit. He didn't get along with his star players for one reason or another. With Reggie, Billy thought he had a cocky attitude. He also probably didn't like that Reggie got a ton of attention. Steinbrenner and fans loved him. It hit a breaking point on June 18th at Fenway Park when Billy pulled Reggie out of right field in the middle of an inning because he thought he was dogging it on a fly ball.
Look at this. Look at Billy. Is he hot? Reggie has done that on several balls hit to right field. Look, Elston getting between, wants to make sure there are no blows struck down there. Billy is really upset.
That may be the first time I've ever seen that happen in a dugout. Billy wants to get at Reggie. And he's being restrained by, that's in full view of the crowd, being restrained by Yogi Berra and Elston Howard. Elston Howard has his down. Billy gets around, but now Yogi's got him and trying to wrestle him down.
Yogi's got him.
Yogi's got him, and who's that on the bench? That's Bobby Cox, I believe. No, that was Dick Hauser had him from behind, and Yogi has him in front. And in full view of the Boston crowd on the right side. And certainly, as you can see, in full view of our cameras, and we would presume the Game of the Week cameras as well.
Having room with Billy Martin and played with him for so many years.
Among other things that they fought about, Billy refused to bat Reggie cleanup. Billy despised the Sport magazine article written in June of '77 when Reggie said, "I'm the straw that stirs the drink." It created a divide. Reggie versus Billy turned into Billy versus George. This is Reggie Jackson talking with Howard Stern in 2009 about his beef with...
But you hated him, right? You hated Billy Martin.
I didn't like him. I didn't waste my time hating people. It's too much effort.
He played mind games with you. I mean, he wouldn't.
What
He
would
didn't
he
want.
do?
Well, he, batting fourth, the fourth position, cleanup, as they say.
Yeah, he wouldn't let it
He
happen.
wouldn't let Reggie,
Really?
Mr. Jackson, do this.
Right.
Now, why? Why the bug
That
up
was
his
bad
ass?
for the
Well,
team.
because I think that he thought it was very important to me, which it was.
Yes.
At the same time, it's a special thing at that time. There's never been a black superstar with the Yankees, although Elston Howard was a great, great player.
I think what you're implying is Billy Martin had it in for you, so to speak, want to put you in your place.
That's correct.
By
That is
his
correct.
power trip. In other words, hey, you want to be cleanup? It ain't going to happen. I'm the boss man.
The way that I became the cleanup hitter is Thurman Munson and Lou Piniella went to Billy Martin's room in early August 1977. Said, Billy, we're struggling. You're hurting the ball club by not hitting this guy cleanup. Get out of the way and let him go.
And
then he listened?
We wound up being 41-11 our last 52 games.
I didn't realize you two were going at it that
He never
much
spoke.
all the time.
He never spoke to me for about a year and a half. First year and a half I was there.
Wow.
He had an intermediary named Fran Healy, a catcher, that came in I didn't play the fifth game of the playoffs against Kansas City and the Yankees in 1977. Okay, I was benched, and it was a big national thing. So Fran Healy comes out of the manager's office, and he comes to me, and he says, Reggie, he says, you're not playing tonight. I said, really? I said, well, who's supposed to tell me? You're the backup catcher. And Fran says, no, I was in there, and Billy called me in. He told one of the coaches to tell you, and he wouldn't tell you. He said, so I'm telling you. He said, now let me tell you what you need to do. You need to go out on the bench. You need to not act upset. You need to be a part of the team. The cameras are going to be on you. The people and the fans will go against you if you if you sulk or whatever. He said. So if you have to pretend, just be rooting for the team, because you never know. You may get in there. In the ninth inning, I went in and got a pinch hit. And
Reggie ended up having his most plate appearances from the cleanup spot that season, and obviously the results were there despite all of the tension. The Yankees won the World Series, but the next year, '78, shit hit the fan. The narrative is that the Yankees had a World Series hangover to start the season, because by July 17th, they were 14 games behind the Red Sox in the division. The reality is that the Red Sox played out of their minds the first 3 months, while the Yankees were just okay. That July 17th date that I mentioned was a low point for the Yankees, but it was also the low point for the Billy versus Reggie show. Martin gave Reggie the bunt signal in the 10th inning of a tie game versus Kansas City to advance Munson to second base. Martin reconsidered after the first pitch and gave Reggie the swing away sign. Reggie, though, continued to try to bunt and eventually popped up his final attempt. In the middle of it all going on, third base coach Dick Hauser even went to Reggie to tell him verbally the bunt sign was off. Reggie just blatantly ignored Billy Martin's sign. The Yankees lost in the 11th inning. The next day, Martin said, "I was shocked. I understood what he was doing. Here was a player denying me and his teammates. It stinks." The bunting incident led Martin to suspend Reggie indefinitely, which turned into a 5-game suspension. And George Steinbrenner actually supported the decision, saying you can't have players defying the manager. But a few days later, when the team was leaving Chicago, Martin shot his way out of town by making a comment to reporters about Reggie and George. He said, "The two of them deserve each other. One's a born liar, the other's convicted." Billy ended up resigning on July 24th. He looked haggard when he was talking to the media, and had he not resigned, he would have been fired. Bob Lemon came in to replace him as manager. Billy's outburst about Reggie made sense. His outburst towards George, though, came out of nowhere. Steinbrenner said he was shocked to hear Billy's comments, because their working relationship over the past 2 to 3 weeks had been so good. They were on the same page with Reggie. Billy was going through some off-field health issues at the time. He'd also been upset about a clause in his contract that George insisted be put in, that Billy would be subject to fines if he made public comments critical of Steinbrenner or the front office. It would also seem Billy was upset about losing his clubhouse. But the Yankees' epic turnaround that year actually started by late July. They stormed back to beat the Red Sox in the tiebreaker, they won the division, and they won the World Series. Billy just was not there to manage it. If you thought all of that was a circus, now this is where things really get weird. A week later, at Old Timers Day, the Yankees announced that Billy Martin was returning to manage the Yankees for the 1980 season. What? Remember, this is Old Timers Day in 1978, and they're announcing Martin will be the manager 2 years down the line.
Introducing and announced at the same moment that the manager of the Yankees for the 1980 season, and hopefully for many years after that, will be number 1, Billy Martin.
Martin received the loudest and longest ovation of the day. Are you ready to hear what the plan was? Martin would serve as a team advisor and then succeed Bob Lemon in 1980. Lemon would then become the general manager, replacing Cedric Tallis. Tallis was going to return to his previous duties as vice president and director of scouting. But with George, nothing goes to plan. He just loved the spectacle of it. The Yankees struggled to start the 79 season, so George fired Lemon and brought Billy Martin back earlier. Lemon managed the team's epic 78 comeback, but George could not stay away from Billy. The 79 season was difficult for many reasons. They finished in 4th place, but Munson's death in August really just devastated the team, especially Billy, who was very close with Thurman. After the season, Martin was fired because he got into a fight with a marshmallow salesman at a hotel in Minneapolis. This is where a record-scratching noise would play? A marshmallow salesman? Are you kidding me? According to Martin's autobiography, the Marshmallow Man told Martin he didn't deserve his Manager of the Year award. Martin responded by betting the man $500 he could beat him up. Martin won the bet. Imagine being so thin-skinned that you let a marshmallow salesman, which is one of the more ludicrous job descriptions I've ever heard of, get to you. This was Martin's temper problem. After this firing, which was Yankees firing number 2, Billy took a little bit of a hiatus from the Yankees. He went to manage his hometown A's in the 1980 season, and he turned them around immediately. They reached the ALCS in 1981, but they lost to the Yankees, and this obviously crushed Billy. An interesting thing that happened around this time was his celebrity went past baseball. He appeared on the cover of Time magazine in 81 with the title, "It's Incredible." And a few years later, in 1986, he appeared on an episode of Saturday Night Live. It's not every day that a baseball manager, not even a player, a manager gets those sort of things. But just a year later, Martin wore out his welcome in Oakland, and he was fired, but not out of work for long.
I have every reason to believe that we will have a great relationship and that we're going to go back to a winning basic formula and bring back a championship to New York. And you've got to go with a winner in order to get a winner. And as you look at the records of the various managers, there are only 2 or 3 managers in baseball today active who have winning records from the time they started managing. And Alfred Martin is one of those fellas.
I've had a lot of long talks with George. A lot of guys are going to wonder how we're going to get along. Like, I'm sure you're going to ask me that question later on. Well, we've straightened a lot of things out. For instance, I'll be handling all the trades.
What do you mean?
There'll be no phone calls in the dugout.
What do you mean? That's not right. I'm handling the trades.
That isn't the way we say it,
I have the right to call you in the dugout.
And that's not the way it's going to be, George.
You're damn right it is, and if you don't like it, you're fired.
You haven't hired me yet.
The 83 season was highlighted by the George Brett pine tar incident, but Billy was also suspended on 2 separate occasions for umpire abuse.
Don't you be intimidating me.
I'm not intimidating you.
Don't you be intimidating me.
I'm not intimidating you, but I'm going to tell you something. As far as I'm concerned, he went enough.
Well, that's good enough for me.
Okay.
But sometimes get some help on it, too, all right?
All right.
That's the rule.
That was actually one of the nicer exchanges he had with umps. It's really the only audio that's clear that I could find of him yelling at an umpire. He had hundreds that ended in him kicking dirt, screaming, and being ejected. The Yankees finished 3rd that year despite winning 91 games. In December, Billy was replaced with Yogi Berra as manager. There was no one incident that led to this firing. I'm using air quotes around firing this time because Billy remained on the payroll. It was just a general distraction among the team all year long in 83, and Billy was always at the center of it. I think Butch Winnegar summed it up best. He said, "He's a guy that I admired, but despised." The team didn't perform great under Yogi in 84, and even though George said Yogi would remain the manager, he was fired in early 1985 and replaced with Billy. The Yankees were really good this year. They won 97 games, but they finished 2nd behind Toronto. Ricky Henderson had a monster year, and this was Don Mattingly's MVP season. Billy was a mess. After a losing streak in September effectively knocked them out of the playoff race, he fought Ed Whitson at a hotel bar in Baltimore. Whitson is well known among Yankee fans who remember the 80s as being a great pitcher elsewhere who stunk once the Yankees signed him. So he's the Carl Pavano of the 1980s. Whitson could fight, though. Apparently had martial arts training, and he kicked Billy's ass, breaking his arm. Billy was fired yet again. This is number 4. Of this firing, George said, "The reason I took myself out of this thing was because I was simply fed up with everything that happened with Billy after the season. The barroom stuff was bad enough, but then he demanded to renegotiate his contract and made it sound like I was ungrateful to him. Who else brought him back to manage 4 times? Who else paid half of his hotel bills that weren't paid? Who else gave him a $200,000 loan to pay his back income taxes? He tried to call my bluff, and this is what has happened. I'm sorry it happened, but I just got fed up." Kind of sounds like George was a little bit of an enabler for Billy. It almost ended there, at Billy 4. He remained close to the team as an advisor. In 86, his number was retired and he was honored in Monument Park. But George couldn't resist temptation. Billy was hired for a 5th time in 1988. In May of that year, he was involved in yet another brawl, this time at a Dallas strip club. He also dealt with more on-field umpire issues and suspensions. A month later, Steinbrenner fired him for a 5th and final time. By this point, though, the main concern was with Billy's well-being as a human, never mind as a baseball manager. After the Yankees limped to the 1980s finish line, there were rumors that Billy was coming back for the 1990 season, Billy 6. Sadly, though, Billy died at the age of 61 on December 25th, 1989. It's definitely tragic how his life ended. He couldn't get out of this vicious and repetitive cycle. In a twisted way, though, Billy's death and also George's suspension from baseball operations were the best things for the Yankees as an organization. They purged themselves of the 1980s and rebuilt in the 90s into what we know them as today. Billy was known for being a gritty baseball player and manager. Billy was made famous for his outbursts, both good and bad, his feuds and his flaws. But Billy is remembered for being hired and fired. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. It's just reality. Thanks for listening.
You know, a lot of people think Billy and I argue all the time. Actually, we agree on just about everything, right, Bill?
You betcha, George.
We even drink the same beer.
Light beer from Miller. Lite's got 1/3 less calories than their regular beer, and it's less filling.
And the best thing is it tastes so great.
No, George, the best thing is less filling.
No, Bill, it tastes great.
Less filling, George.
Billy, it tastes great.
Less filling, George.
Billy?
Yeah, George.
You're fired.
Oh, not again.